Hi, K-pop lovers. Welcome back to our channel. ARMY didn't just cheer. They lost it. Not the usual screaming you expect at a concert, this was different. People were shaking. Cameras couldn't stay still. Some fans didn't even realize they had stopped breathing. Because what Jimin did on that stage felt like something that wasn't supposed to happen. And within minutes, it was everywhere. But to understand why that one moment hit so hard, you have to understand the journey that built it. So if you're ready, let's go back to the beginning. And before we do, hit like, drop a comment with your favorite Jimin stage moment, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you do not want to miss what's coming. Let's get into it. Park Jimin debuted with BTS on June 13, 2013, and even in those early days, before the world knew his name, there was already something different about the way he moved. BTS was still grinding, still building from the ground up, performing on smaller stages for smaller crowds. But even then, eyes kept drifting toward Jimin. There was a natural fluidity to the way he carried himself, precise but never mechanical, expressive but never forced. Like the music wasn't something he was following, but something he was becoming a part of. His movements were clean, his presence was magnetic, and there was a quiet intensity behind everything he did that made it impossible to look away. You could feel the potential radiating off him, even if it hadn't fully arrived yet. And that's what makes everything that came after so important. Because what you were watching in those early years wasn't a finished product. It was the foundation being laid, piece by piece, for something much bigger. Then came the 2014 Net Asian Music Awards, and everyone got their first real taste of what this was going to become. BTS performed alongside Block B in a high-energy collaborative stage, and in the middle of that performance, Jimin did something that nobody in that arena was prepared for. He ripped his shirt off on stage. It was choreographed, built into the performance as a dramatic release of tension, but the effect on the crowd was unlike anything that stage had seen. The arena erupted. Fancams went viral overnight. And suddenly, across every corner of the internet, one question was being asked over and over again: who is that? Who is Jimin from BTS? It was the first time the world stopped and truly paid attention. One movement. And everything shifted. But as iconic as that moment was, it was only the beginning. Because the version of Jimin that was coming next would make even that moment look like a preview. 2016 arrived, and with it, an album called Wings. Jimin was given a solo track that would permanently alter the trajectory of his career and change how the world understood him as a performer. That song was Lie. And this was not just a song. It was a work of art. Dark, theatrical choreography rooted entirely in contemporary dance, the exact discipline Jimin had been classically trained in since his school days. Every performance of Lie felt like watching someone genuinely living inside the music, not dancing to it. His body told the story of pain, deception, and inner chaos. The expressions weren't rehearsed. The emotion wasn't performed. You could feel it bleeding through every single movement. This was when people started to see a completely different side of him, not just technically impressive, but artistically powerful, like there was something happening beneath the surface that you couldn't quite explain but could absolutely feel. He wasn't just hitting choreography anymore. He was telling a story through it. And once you saw that, you couldn't unsee it. Then the 2016 Net Asian Music Awards arrived, and what happened on that stage that night is still talked about in 2026 as one of the greatest performances in K-pop history. Jimin opened the night performing a remix of Boy Meets Evil alongside J-Hope, leading into their individual solo stages. The choreography was already intense, already demanding, already the kind of thing that would have been enough on its own. But Jimin did it while wearing a blindfold. Not as a costume detail. Not as a visual gimmick. He literally could not see. J-Hope guided him from beside, but Jimin's execution remained absolutely flawless, Every beat landed, every transition was clean, every expression exactly where it needed to be, as if his body had memorized not just the choreography but the entire emotional arc of the performance. When the audience understood what they were actually watching, the arena detonated. People stood from their seats. Other idols watching from backstage covered their mouths in disbelief. The screaming wasn't the usual concert screaming, it was the kind that comes from witnessing something that feels genuinely impossible. And that was only the opening of the night. Because later, during Fire, Jimin delivered the center break at the 3:33 mark with a complexity and precision in his footwork that sent clips of that single moment spiraling across every platform for weeks. Fans immediately named it the 3:33 moment. One night. Two completely different sides of the same person. And the world finally began to understand, this was not an ordinary idol. 2 years later, at the 2018 Melon Music Awards, Jimin shocked the world in an entirely different direction. On an international stage watched by millions, he performed alongside J-Hope and Jungkook in a tribute to traditional Korean dance, and Jimin specifically performed Bukkichum, the traditional Korean fan dance created in 1958 by Kim Baekbong, drawing from shamanistic rituals and folk dances of the Joseon era. This was not something modern K-pop idols typically did on mainstream award stages. But Jimin performed it with breathtaking beauty, cultural pride, and a depth of artistic intention that left the audience in awed silence. People who had never heard of Bukkichum in their lives were searching for it by the next morning. The performance spread to every corner of the internet. And in recognition of his contribution to bringing this traditional art form to a global audience, Jimin was later awarded a plaque of appreciation by the Kim Baekbong Fan Dance Conservation Society. A K-pop idol receiving a formal honor from a traditional cultural preservation institution. That tells you everything about the scale of impact this performance had. He wasn't just performing for the crowd in that arena. He was performing for an entire culture, and the world received it. Then came the 2019 Melon Music Awards, and if you ask ARMY which Jimin performance made them cry the hardest, a significant number will point here without a second of hesitation. Jimin opened the Dionysus performance with a solo contemporary stage that left the entire arena in stunned silence, not because the energy dropped, but because it transformed into something else entirely. Using a flowing white cloth as a prop, he moved across the stage in gestures so weightless, so graceful, so deeply controlled that he looked less like a pop idol and more like a principal dancer at one of the world's great performance companies. Every movement was intentional. Every pause was loaded with feeling. People weren't reacting, they were absorbing. Watching every breath, every transition, completely locked in. It was the kind of silence that only happens when something is too beautiful, too real, or too intense to interrupt. And Jimin later named this stage as one of the most legendary moments of his career when asked about it on the show Suchwada. Some fans that night didn't even try to film. They just stood there, trying to hold on to the feeling for as long as they possibly could. It was also at this same performance that the now iconic orange hair fancam emerged, the fancam that went on to become the first in K-pop history to surpass 100 million views. The hair. The outfit. The choreography. The expression on his face that was somehow, inexplicably, impossibly right. People who had never listened to a single BTS song watched that fancam and couldn't look away. March 2023 arrived, and everything changed again. Jimin released his debut solo album Face, and with it the lead single, Set Me Free PT2, a track that nobody expected to sound like this from him. Dark, intense hip-hop, with rap verses that functioned not just as lyrics but as a full declaration of liberation. The performance was shocking in the most powerful sense of the word. Surrounded by dozens of backup dancers, Jimin moved through the stage with a rawness, a weight, and a confidence that felt entirely new, heavier, more commanding, like he had complete ownership over every inch of that space. He wasn't just performing. He was leading the moment. But what made attentive ARMY completely break down was a detail hidden in the ending. The closing choreography of Set Me Free PT2 was deliberately designed to mirror the ending of his Lie performance from 2016, but with one crucial, devastating difference. In Lie, Jimin had fallen to the ground, trapped, in pain. In Set Me Free PT2, he rose, dressed in white, representing rebirth, truth, and total freedom. From falling to rising. From Lie to Set Me Free. 7 years of a journey, encoded into a single choreographic transition. That connection, that intentionality, that is the kind of artistry that separates good performers from truly unforgettable ones. And then came 2026. After everything, after every stage, every record, every version of himself he had built and rebuilt, Jimin stood at the center of Goyang Stadium on April 9, 2026, on the opening night of the Arirang World Tour. 82 shows. 34 cities. 23 countries. Every ticket sold out within hours. A 360-degree in-the-round stage that put BTS at the absolute center of every person in the building. Before the first note played, Jimin looked out at the crowd and said simply, "It's been a long time since we've held a concert like this. We worked really hard on it, so I hope you enjoy it." And then the music started. And Jimin danced. Not the Jimin of 2013, still searching for himself. Not the Jimin of 2016, still proving himself. Not the Jimin of 2019, still astonishing a world that was only beginning to understand him. This was Jimin in 2026, carrying every one of those chapters inside him, every breakthrough, every transformation, moving with a mastery that only comes from choosing, every single day for over a decade, to be better. And in the middle of that performance, something shifted. A subtle change in his movement, a drop in the energy that somehow made everything feel heavier and more real all at once. A split second of silence fell over the crowd. And then it hit. The screams came crashing in, louder than anything before, raw and completely unfiltered. 70,000 army bombs glowing in unison. Fancams shaking. Voices breaking. Some fans laughed because it felt unreal. Others just stood there, stunned, unable to do anything but feel it. Someone in the front row held a sign that read, "We waited. It was worth it." And that feeling didn't fade when the show ended. It stayed. You could hear it in every comment, every reaction, every post that flooded every platform in the hours that followed. Because it wasn't just about what Jimin did technically. It was about what that moment meant. It was about every version of himself that had existed before that point. The boy learning to dance for the first time, the performer delivering Lie with everything he had, the artist rising in white after years of falling in the dark, all of it arriving together in a single movement on the biggest stage of his career. The audience didn't just see it. They felt it. They recognized it. Even if they couldn't name it, even if they couldn't find the words, they knew they were watching something that had been building for a very long time. And in that moment, finally, it arrived completely. That is why the reaction was so explosive. That is why ARMY lost their minds. Because they weren't just watching someone perform. They were witnessing what happens when someone spends their entire life becoming exactly who they were meant to be. Jimin doesn't just dance. He creates moments. Moments that live in memory long after the music stops. Moments that feel different every time you watch them. And he is nowhere near done creating them. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, hit like if this moved you, drop a comment below telling us which Jimin stage moment hit you hardest, and share this with a fellow ARMY who deserves to feel this too. We'll see you in the next one. Purple You, ARMY. Purple Heart Annyeong.